Wait, can you get enough speed to go over? Oh, ow.
Um, yes is the answer. But you will
What we
lose
need
2
here?
doors.
Um, I mean, I'm good on my side.
You're out here like running stretch, running routes like a criminal.
You know, sometimes you gotta be ready.
You're out here asking gangsters if you're gonna end up in their gang and how long you're they doing
Not
routes.
directly.
What's going on,
And
mate?
it
You got
was
something to tell me?
no. No. I actually yes. Yes, I do have something to tell you.
What's that?
I'm not Flop. Is that too much?
No, no, not too much, but I'm happy you're not doing that stuff. That's good.
You know, I had a conversation with Lucas about Flop today.
Oh yeah?
Yep. I think it's actually the first time I've spoken about Flop at all since all of this really started. And my TLDR was his relationship to Ziggy is okay. Well, for starters, Ziggy not getting into the police department obviously pushed him away. He then found a home with other people, and you know, the grass always looks greener on the other side. And he probably wanted to do whatever to support Ziggy, and is very likely why he left the PD. And you know, logically, it would probably make more sense to leave during a time where PD is in a rough spot, to use it as like a
Like an excuse?
an excuse, yeah, a justification behind leaving, despite that not being the real intent. I mean, you and I both know how it is, especially in a gang or an MC or whatever. Like, there's no just walking away from it.
Yeah.
We had those conversations with Ziggy, and everyone, and I mean, he sort of promised up and down that, you know, if he wanted to leave, nothing bad would happen. But I don't believe that to be the case. Not at all.
No, I don't either.
I just, what I don't like is the fact that people who I've considered friends, family even, have felt that because they didn't get their jobs, specifically Ziggy and Snow, have now turned to a life of crime. And those talents and resources could have been utilized so much better had we have just had someone at the helm with a fucking brain cell.
It's a difficult one, I'll be honest, because I agree with you. I do. But to me, you know, these people we once called friends or family, for them to even consider going down the road they have, to me, there must have been the seed there in the first place. I don't think. Yes, yeah, I think them not getting hired was probably a trigger and pushed them. But you don't do the things, you know, they've done unless you thought about it or considered it in the first place. I don't know. I just
I don't disagree with you. Explaining it to Lucas, I was saying that I don't think it was the straw on the camel's back. I think it was a major weight that contributed early on that made it so that something else ended up being the straw on the camel's back, right? We see people daily who get taken hostage. Martha, prime example,
Mm-hmm.
wonderful person, not a bad bone in her body, right? But eventually, doesn't matter what kind of person you are going to you're going to be at your wit's end, right? When bad things just continuously happen to you because you are a single person surrounded by large groups of people who are all friends with each other, who take advantage of people who are alone. When you were previously surrounded by a large group of competent individuals who all got to have their job back, except you and a select few, like we see daily what happens. Like being told that Shlomi got shot today. I'm gonna be real. I haven't seen Manor around very often, which is probably why it happened. Now imagine being someone who was previously a cop without the protection of the police department because you're now just a civilian seeking a job as a police officer, but you never get it. I think a lot of people would resort to doing things they otherwise wouldn't. And honestly, I can't imagine it was a situation where Snow, for example, went into it with the mentality of like, I'm going to do criminal activities as much as it was he probably found someone he felt comfortable with who probably led him in to that lifestyle. And at some point, you probably realize you're in too deep and there's no backing out. And the path of least resistance is sort of sticking it through, but you now have the protection of a group of people. You know what I mean? And to be clear, I'm not using that as like an excuse or like proper justification. I just
I
believe
get
that to
it,
be the case as to why it ended up being that way. And same thing with Ziggy. I would not be surprised if Snow and Ziggy have borderline identical situations where, um, just the exact same thing happened, just with different groups.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
The only person I know that like hasn't necessarily delved into stuff, maybe two people. I don't know. I don't know what Jenny's been up to, but DuPont, I think, is a prime example.
Jenny's not a good example.
Okay. Well, DuPont certainly is a prime example, in my opinion. And I wonder if she ever ended up getting her interview for Shift 1.
I
I
hope
spoke
so.
with King regarding it because I would love to see DuPont back in the police department. I would fucking love to see DuPont. But at the same time, like I had my frustrations back then and I was in the police department. It was just fucking rough. But it also took like an additional toll knowing that like these very competent people were available and were just overlooked. Like,
What's
I
nagging
mean,
at my mind is whether or not it would have changed anything. Like, like Flop got hired and look where he's ended up.
okay, but I think it's different in Flop's case because okay. This conversation I was having with Lucas was making like um we were like comparing, let's say, Sky, who is
Mm-hmm.
with Perez, who's in Hades, from my understanding, right? Um,
Yeah.
to Flop and Ziggy. And I think the massive difference is the start of Flop and Ziggy's relationship, they were both on the same side. Whereas the start of Sky and Perez's relationship, they were not. And I think the important aspect of that is they probably drew lines in their relationship pretty early on regarding how they would deal with those things that never had to be drawn until Bob got his job back and Ziggy didn't. And Ziggy started
Mm-hmm.
doing other things and probably played it off as if it wasn't as bad as it actually was, similar to what he did with us in that, that
Yeah.
conversation. And then, you care for someone a lot and you're willing to make sacrifices for that person. Um, and you realize they're too far in. And the only way you can keep them safe to the best of your ability is to be alongside them just about every step of the way and surrounding yourself with those same, groups of individuals. But again, the reason I think it's different is because the foundation of those relationships started very differently, despite it eventually ending in, officers dating or being married to someone kind of on the other side.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I want to know where it started for Flop, you know? Like, how long the idea of not being a cop or doing this kind of stuff has been in his head, you know?
I mean, I think it's something that's floated through a lot of our minds. Anyone in the skeleton crew, right? Like, we've been ran through the fucking ringer. Like it wasn't a good, healthy environment, and it hadn't been for a very long time. And then it got better, and then it got worse. Um, I think it was just, honestly, I think it was just the circumstances of the police department being bad, and it being a convenient way to realign himself with his husband. There's no way you can convince me that Flop on his own without Ziggy would have ever made that same decision. I think he knew the moment he left the police department, he would have a job at Milton's, um, which isn't surprising because let's not forget, he worked at Harmony before.
Yeah.
He worked at other mechanic shops. Like, this is within his wheelhouse, except this specific mechanic shop being aligned with ADMC,
Right.
which surrounds him even further with people in the ADMC. And even prior to that, the adoption of Rue. Like, everything just kept leading to further and further routes into ADMC. And it is what it is. Um, I think if we had a conversation with Flop, he would probably argue and say Ziggy had nothing to do with it. And he may even believe that. But again, there's no amount of money in this world that would convince me that if Ziggy was not in the equation, he, you know, he would still be part of ADMC.
And you know what I think he'd say? I think he'd say it was our fault that he was where he is.
And I'm sorry, but I'm a firm believer in that. Uh, you need to take responsibility for your own actions. Um, and if you are in a situation that you don't like, or if you're in a family setting in which you don't feel someone is doing enough, speak with them, bring it up.
And the sad
And
thing is,
if you don't, I think you lose your right to complain.
I completely agree. And I think the saddest part is after everything that's happened, everything that's happened with the family and him leaving the PD and everything, the only thing he's taking responsibility for is killing that cop, killing Pierce. Nothing else. Nothing else was his fault. But he admits that publicly. I don't know.
I think that's done out of necessity, though. As in, again, I think it solely boils down to his ties to Ziggy and Ziggy's, position in the ADMC. He feels he has to go above and beyond to prove himself. He was given the opportunity. If he said no, I think that would reflect very poorly on him, but also Ziggy. Probably didn't want to do that, and then ultimately came up with. I mean, he didn't come up with that. That was determined for him. Like, he was told what to do. There's not a doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
He followed through with what he was told, and that's that. Like, I don't think it was him that decided those things. So I don't know. No, it's just such a strange thing. Especially considering, like, ADMC specifically always announce what they do.
Yeah.
So it's not a coincidence that the moment he put out that twat, everything got retweeted by ADMC members. And that's because that was for sure his, like, proper initiation into ADMC. And yet, when he sat in the car, I don't know if I ever explained this to you. He was sitting in the passenger seat of a car I tried to pull over, and McQuillan was in the driver's seat. Did I explain that to you?
Yeah, you told me, yeah.
Not a fucking word. Nothing. And I had no clue it was him. It was just someone in the passenger seat. Sean said, "Oh, it's a friend. They're not talkative or whatever." I don't remember. It was so long ago. And I kind of just, like, shrugged it off because I had to go and respond to something else. And then they continue in the direction of Milton's, and minutes later. Do you ever get charged? Oh, what's going on with that?
It's on the docket. He's awaiting trial.
Is he not pleading guilty?
Doesn't look like it. I don't really know what's happening. It's Sky's case. Yeah, I don't know.
Sean McQuillan has a warrant out for his arrest for the murder.
When does it expire? Because I extended it a few days ago.
It expires 29th, so in 2 days.
Okay.
But it's, from my understanding, to be indefinitely extended.
Yeah.
He also can't convince me that he would do all this, take ownership, and then just like how do I explain this? Takes ownership and by way of pretty much openly admitting that he did it, but specifically to the police, not like in a roundabout way. It was straight up, I did it.
Yep.
I don't understand why, unless, again, it was something sort of demanded or expected by the club, which would make sense, actually, considering, the prior encounters with police and ADMC.
I think it might have been required. Because he sent a text to one of the members with the 911 that he did, like, almost as proof. So, why I don't get in all of this is Ziggy.
Oh my god! You know what I just realized?
What's that?
when I was speaking to, I was at Little Soul. I don't think you were with me at this. Wait, you were with me. Remember at Lucky Plucker? I mentioned, oh, well, if you were to go undercover, what is a gang going to get you to do to prove? And I said they're going to have you murder someone, like in front of them, because you can't simultaneously pretend to be
A cop.
right.
Or not a cop, yeah, I
Well,
know what you're saying,
a
yeah.
criminal, but while simultaneously being a cop and using information to further an investigation after you murdered someone.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Like you can't murder an innocent person to save your life. Like legally, that doesn't work, even under duress. Like you have a gun to your head, you have a gun aimed at someone else. The person behind you with the gun to your head says, "Shoot that person, or you're dead." Unfortunately, if you shoot that person, it's still murder, even if under duress. And it's crazy to me that like I brought that up in conversation earlier, and then realizing that that is exactly what they did to Flock. This is exactly what they fucking did. They had him murder a cop,
To prove he's no
specifically a
longer...
cop,
Yeah.
as means of like cutting the ties permanently from the police department and proving that it's not him just being undercover. It's dirty. That's really, really dirty.
What do we do now?
I don't know. I mean, you and I both agreed to do something, but I'm going to be real. The reality is that anytime I run into ADMC, they outnumber the police department.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I'll be honest, I don't want to do it to save him from that
No.
group, because he's beyond saving at this point. If anything, I want to do it to make everything he did worth mean nothing. And maybe he can actually take the time to think about what he's done when there's no club left standing and he's just a murderer. Maybe then it will click what he's, how he's fucked his life up for nothing. Like I was saying, me and Ziggy had a whole talk about, Flop and everything, and making sure that he doesn't get hurt from all this. And I guess he's just stepped aside or let this happen, and now Flop's, in the club. I don't understand why he'd let that happen. But what can we expect?
I think we knew Ziggy was in a bad spot. We sort of hoped for the best, and unfortunately, there isn't always a positive outcome in situations.
No.
And that sucks, because I do think in an ideal world, if they could have had the opportunity to sort of like reposition from ADMC and collectively both be in the police department, I think they probably would. Not right now, to be clear.
Yeah.
I mean, like before everything happened. Right now, I think they have too many deep-rooted connections at this point. They feel they likely owe others,
Yeah. Yeah. They're too far gone at this point, but it's alright. We've still got each other, we've still got Etcher, and, that's what matters, so...
so bad is when it happened. I obviously knew, and when I say I knew, um, I called out the vehicle on radio. Sky had mentioned Flop being in that exact outfit that I described, and then it all clicked. And the moment it did, Sky pretty much on radio said like, nobody talk about it, blah blah blah. And my concern, especially with proximity from the hospital to where ADMC is, when Etta called me, I was concerned that people could be listening into the phone call. And so I was like, Etta, I hate to do this, but we cannot have this conversation over the phone. And then Sean was waiting for her at the hospital. And then I took her car, brought it into Mission Row, into the motor pool, and we sat there and talked for quite some time. And then I got into her car. I drove off, and Sean was waiting right by Fantastic Place off of Vespucci. I drove off. They never followed me. I sort of circled around for a bit. And when I returned, he was gone. They were definitely waiting for the opportunity.
Yeah. And they already tried once, I think, so. I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. Maybe it's gonna be my New Year's resolution to go after the ADMC, but for now, I think we just gotta pull up our bootstraps and exactly, and keep on doing what we're doing, you know.
Get by for now. Wait until the circumstances sort of surrounding us get better.
Yeah.
And when we're equipped to deal with it, that's when we deal with it.
Exactly.
I'm Motion King. I don't like Sean.
There's nothing to like.
At first, I would have disagreed with you, because when I spoke with him regarding that whole situation where he kidnapped Espinosa and I shot him, and it was all because he wanted information and blah blah blah. Like, he seemed genuine. And we had, you know, a heart to heart, and you know, briefly discussed Flop. And I don't know, similar to Ziggy, where I knew it was a bad situation, but I wanted the outcome to not be bad, and I was hoping it wouldn't be bad, but I also know it's out of my hands, so you kind of just sit there and shrug and go, yeah, all right, you know, and hope for the best. And then it just got considerably worse over time. And knowing full well that he has a warrant out for his arrest for that same murder, he was definitely the one to put him up to it. Especially considering, I forget who told me, I don't know if it was you, but the whole Etta situation.
Yeah.
That was Sean, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
I don't think the ADMC realized this, but like, Sean's the head that needs to be cut off. But when you're such a high, you know, you're so high on the totem pole, no one's going to be willing to do that.
No, of course not. I mean, my opinion, he's nothing more than a snake, and I don't mean that in the typical sense that everybody uses, but I think both he and everybody else realizes that his only, decent quality is his bite. There's nothing else about him. He's just an angry little man who just has some venom and he just uses it. There's nothing else good about him. It's just like that time in the Marshall parking lot. There was like 5, 6 ADMC. All I was doing was talking. And they couldn't handle it, and Sean pulled a gun. Because I called him one too many names. That's all he is. He's a gun. He's a bite. That's it. And people like him get ahead in the world because no one fights back. And in a gang setting, that's what's gonna get you ahead.
On a gang setting, you fall in line. You find vulnerable people who don't have much direction in their life, who are lacking things in their life. You provide them with basic necessities. You provide them with the sense of family and security, even though that's not really the case. You're in more danger. And you have people loyal to you despite the fact that you've given them very little outside of someone to look at when they look left and right. Even if those people don't have the best of intentions, doesn't matter. You know this about me. I would love to get into the mind of someone like Sean to figure out how and why they ended up where they did.
Yeah. I think
the same reason I would love to get into the minds of like a serial killer, find out what the contributing factors as to why they did what they did, and what was the straw on the camel's back.
I think for some people it's it's a sad story of a rough childhood and just wrong circumstances or bad circumstances that led it to him. But I think other circumstances, like Sean, I think he's just a sociopath. And that's it. I don't want to give him, some soppy story that's led him to doing this live. I don't think that's him.
I want to agree with you, but then I think back to the snow situation, and I go, had the circumstances have been different, right? Like, and obviously I say this from like a biased perspective, but like, then I think of other situations in which, like, I don't know Sean's past, right? Like, so it's like we're purely just assuming, and I've never spoken to Sean at length outside of very few circumstances, but you then consider someone like Snow or Ziggy. Like, I knew these people, and I know the reason they ended up in the situations that they were in is because of circumstances beyond their control. And let me correct myself, to be clear. I don't want there to be any confusion. I think they were fully in control, but picked what they felt would keep them safe the best. And it sort of slipped and slipped and slipped until they're in the positions that they're in now. They're in too deep and there's no turning back. So it'd be very hypocritical of me to say I understand or could understand where someone like Snow or Ziggy would be coming from, but then say I wouldn't understand Sean It's just more difficult to understand Sean because I don't know him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Which is why I would love to know why.
I don't care to know why. Just he's a sick bastard at the end of the day.
You're not wrong. There's a special place in hell for someone who would be openly willing to cop a murder charge alongside somebody else. And let's not forget, like, remember the hot gun situation that you questioned me about?
Yeah.
He kept that on him intentionally.
Yeah. And the other day when we were talking, he openly admitted that he killed Chastity. In that whole situation. I don't know.
I think what little I know, I no longer think I'm being a hypocrite in saying I understand where someone like Snow would be coming from, but
Mm-hmm.
not Sean. I think there's enough to. I think there's enough to acknowledge that just something ain't right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's different. I know it's bad to say, but you know, some people kill someone else out of survival or necessity, and they'll do everything they can to get away with it, right? Because they don't want to go to prison. It's survival instincts. But then there's people like Sean who will kill to kill. Like they'll kill to get rid of someone or for sport, yeah. And then he's keeping on to the gun because he's playing with the police. You know, that's not the kind of person that's redeemable or came from somewhere good.
It's the fucking person you find out has a fucking human head in a freezer.
Yeah. I don't know. We could talk about. There's so many people out there in the city that we would be here all day trying to psychoanalyze them, but it's never going to happen. But the only people we can psychoanalyze is ourselves and keeping ourselves in check, and that's all we can do, really. Oh, Aubrey Webster's offering a job. I might quit and just go work for him. He's really good, apparently. Yeah.
If I had the time, I'd consider calling him.
Call him.
No. I have to be going 42, unfortunately. Man, I'm not happy or content where things are, but like I've also acknowledged that it's all entirely out of my hands, and you can't convince me that there's anything either of us could have done to change the outcome of those specific circumstances. Nobody could. Bob can tell me to my face it's our fault, and there's no chance in hell I would be able to
Me neither.
acknowledge that as the truth.
You know, the day I found out what happened, I went to the bench in Mirror Park where we had that talk with him, and there was a note on the table that said things could have been different.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Still thinks that either me or us were the ones that pushed him in this direction. Well, I mean, he can't. The boy doesn't know how to take responsibility for anything. Because maybe somewhere deep down he knows what he's done is wrong and he doesn't want to accept the fact that he made those choices and he put himself in the position that he is.
I actually have to park this up north, but your vehicle's down here, right?
Yeah.
I'll leave on this. I would not be surprised, especially knowing what little information I know about Rue and how that sort of relationship started and how Rue needed help and all that stuff. I would not be surprised if Rue ends up getting put in a situation, makes a bad call. They get upset with Rue. Rue does something dumb or no longer wishes to speak to them. And they end up realizing that you can try your absolute best. I say
Hey, what up, officer?
Oh, what are you doing?
Merry Christmas.
Ah! Fuck me, man. Was there a fucking stones in those?
Leave.
God damn it.
You better not have another one. Oh, absolutely the fuck.
Ah! God. God. Honey. Oh. Gotta get ammo. God.
We'll finish this another day.
Okay, yeah. You
Oh,
you
careful,
get go.
Careful, they're throwing stuff. They're throwing stuff.